guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about veiled chameleons and how to take care of them. If you are new to my channel, be sure to subscribe because I do put out 2 new videos about animals every week. Veiled chameleons are considered one of the more easier chameleons to care for. What I like about them is that they don't require a very high humidity level like some of the other species. They are from Saudi Arabia and Yemen, so they are used to an arid climate where they do have water on a regular basis. I'm in the desert, so I have an easier time caring for a veiled chameleon because of those humidity requirements than I would have if I was caring for another species of chameleon. So if you are considering getting a chameleon, just take that into account if you do live in a very dry place. It is possible to care for chameleons that require a very high humidity level in places that are very dry, but it's a lot more work. Some of the people that have other species, such as the panther chameleons, have to have plastic drapes hanging from the ceiling all the way to the floor, covering the area around the cages. So it's a lot more difficult, and that's just not something that I want to deal with. So I really like having a veiled chameleon in this climate. Now, an important thing to understand about chameleons, and this goes for pretty much all species, is that they are a pet that you observe. It is not a pet that you handle or play with or take out. Chameleons are for admiring, for looking at, but not for handling. They're not a good pet for you if you want a pet that's going to be interacting with you a lot. Chameleons do not like to be handled, and it causes severe stress for them to be forced to be touched or handled. It's actually very cruel to force them to interact with you. They're a species that thinks, oh, I want to constantly be hiding. I don't want anybody to see me. So their interpretation of you handling them is that they're now vulnerable and can be attacked either by you or by another predator. Now, sometimes people think, oh, this is just something they need to get over, or something that if I handle them a lot, they'll get better with, they'll get used to. This is an instinct. You don't overcome instincts with animals. You work with an animal's instinct and an animal's natural behavior. You don't try to change their instincts or their behavior. Now, of course, on the internet, you will see people handling veiled chameleons because people care about themselves and their own satisfaction more than animals, and they just interact with them even though the chameleon's not happy, the chameleon's not comfortable, and a lot of times you can actually see in their behavior that they're not enjoying it. If they're turning black, if their color's starting to become brighter and they're just trying to get away, those are all signs that they're not enjoying being interacted with. Sometimes chameleons will even open their mouth and hiss at you, even try to actually bite you if you really irritate them. So it's not something that they want. They don't want to be handled. And with my chameleon, the way we interact is I pretend that I don't notice that she exists, and that makes her happy. Now, some chameleons do get a little bit more friendly than that. Some will actually eat out of your hand, interact with you a little bit more, but just please understand these are not animals that you're going to be taking out every day and cuddling with or playing with. They're really just something that you're going to look at and admire. Chameleons do live for about 6 to 8 years. Now, females and males do look different. The males are bigger, they have brighter colors. There's a crest on their head that is much bigger than that on a female. Females are smaller and they have duller colors, their head's a little bit smaller, and they aren't as bright as a male. However, both make equally, the same pet, the same good pet. So it just depends on what you want. If you're okay with having, a female that's a little bit duller with colors, or if you want something really bright, then you want to go with a male. But either way, there's not much of a difference other than the way that they look. Always house your veiled chameleons by themselves. It doesn't matter if you're like, oh, I'll put 2 females together, or I'll put a male and a female together. No. Don't put them together. It should be 1 cage per chameleon. They should not be together. In the wild, they completely avoid each other. They only come together to breed, so they want their own space. They're an animal that is territorial, and they don't want to be around other chameleons. It actually stresses them out a lot. They don't enjoy it. They can end up fighting, and a stressed out chameleon is just going to end up getting sick. Your chameleon will be happy alone, so don't worry that it's lonely or wants a friend. It doesn't need a friend. It's perfectly happy being by itself. There's really no problem with getting an adult or getting a baby. If you get a baby, just make sure that it is eating. Now let's talk about cages. So the most important thing when you're picking out a cage for your chameleon is to not get a tank or a glass cage. This is a mistake that people make a lot because it's super common for us to keep our reptiles in glass aquariums, tanks, all of that. But for chameleons, you actually can't do that. They need airflow, and they just need to be able to have fresh air going in and out of the cage constantly. So you can't have that with a tank. So I recommend these ReptiBreezes. The cage has to be either mesh or wire, and these ReptiBreezes, the extra large works out great for a veiled chameleon. You want to go with an extra large. Don't get anything smaller than that for a veiled chameleon. This cage behind me is a ReptiBreeze. It's the extra large, so it's 48 inches high and then it's 24 wide and deep. In your cage, you want to make sure to have lots of branches and things for them to climb on, coverage for them to be able to hide, and just lots of plants and things like that. So with these cages, it is pretty difficult to actually hang things on there. So it's a lot easier if you use plants. It's actually really easy to use live plants for chameleons. You can use fake if you want to. If you do decide to go with live plants, just make sure that they aren't treated with any pesticides and that they don't have any fertilizers that are not organic. You also want to make sure that the plants that you do choose are non-toxic and are safe for chameleons because they will eat the leaves. The veiled chameleons just love to eat their plants. The two plants that I recommend for them are the ficus tree and the golden pothos. Now golden pothos is great because it is sturdy. It's pretty easy to take care of actually. It grows a lot. The leaves collect the water so that you can water your chameleon. And then the ficus tree is also sturdy. It's tall, and with the ficus tree you just have to be careful because they do eat the leaves and they'll, you know, kind of kill off your ficus tree eventually. You just have to keep watering it and trying to take care of it. I still like it even though the chameleons will eat it. It's a really good and sturdy tree and great addition for the cage. These plants are pretty easy to take care of. What I do is I take the pots out of the cage once a month and then just completely soak the soil, and then after there's no more water coming out of the bottom, I go ahead and put them back in there, and that keeps them healthy and growing. Now at the end of this video, there will be a video that comes on the screen, and that is a tour of this cage so that you can get some ideas of how to set up a cage for your chameleon. Now veiled chameleons do require a UVV lamp and a heat light, and if you do have live plants, you're probably also going to want to put a grow light on there as well. Now your chameleon does need a UVV light. A UVV light helps them process calcium. If you don't have one, and if you don't exchange it regularly, which is about every 6 months, your chameleon will develop metabolic bone disease. Now this is a very serious issue. It causes deformation, they lose the ability to walk, and if it's not treated, they will die from it. Basically, your daytime reptiles need UVV. This is not something that you can skip. It's not something that you can just do without. It is an essential part of their care. You can consider it basically just as important as actually feeding them. Now, they do need a heat light as well. These chameleons do like it pretty hot, so you want your basking temperature to be about 95 degrees, and I use a 100-watt bulb in order to achieve this temperature, but it's really going to depend on how far apart your light is from the basking spot. And then the areas around the cage and not directly under the basking spot can be between 70s and 80 degrees. This is going to be, you know, different temperature ranges so that the chameleon can move around the cage and regulate its body temperature. Now the heat light can be a daytime light. They do not need the infrared bulbs that stay on at night. All of these lights can turn off during the night. They can actually drop to the low 50s, so as long as your house isn't going to go below 50, they'll be perfectly fine. It's completely normal and natural for them to have a temperature drop that low, and so mine doesn't drop that low, but it does drop a little bit. Now, one of the reasons that a veiled chameleon is one of the preferred species is because they can tolerate a range of humidity levels, which is good because it is hard to keep these screen cages humid. Now 50% humidity is a pretty good target to aim for. So here in the desert, let's say outside it's about 25% humidity right now. Usually in the house it's about 40%, 50%. So between spraying the cage and actually keeping like a humidifier right next to the cage, I'm able to keep it at about 50% humidity. And I like having that humidifier right there. It's actually in this room so that all of us can breathe easier because it just gets way too dry here. But I have it next to the chameleon's cage so that she's getting more of it than the rest of us. Now, spraying the cage is how you're going to water your chameleon. Chameleons do not drink from a water bowl, so don't expect them to. Don't offer them a bowl of water and expect that that's how they're going to get their water. It's not going to happen. So you spray your cage in the morning and in the evening, and they lick the water droplets off of the plants, and that's how they get their water. So that's the best way to do it. You can also get a dripper. You put it at the top of the cage over a plant, and then as the water falls on the leaves, they lick that up. Spraying the cage also helps for them to be able to shed. If you notice that there's little pieces of shed still stuck on your chameleon when they're going through a shed, then just try to raise the humidity level and spray them a little bit more. Try to spray the area that they're in. Pale chameleons really do hate being sprayed by water, but sometimes it's just necessary to try to get them to get that shed off of them. Now, chameleons must be provided with live food. So if you're not okay with feeding insects that are still alive to an animal, then again, it's not the right pet for you. But if you don't mind that, then it probably is a good pet for you. So they do need the live insects. They can have superworms, dubia roaches, waxworms, tomato hornworms, crickets, grasshoppers, even some moths. Just a lot of what is available at pet stores and online is what you can give them. A good variety is always what's best. Superworms and dubia roaches are pretty easy to feed to them because you can get a little shallow plastic dish and then put them in there and set that in the cage, and then the chameleon will be able to go and just get it out of there. But you do also want to feed other insects that they'll have to hunt, like crickets. I really like to use crickets for this because it keeps them active, it keeps them moving, and it gives them something to do. So some of their meals should be something that they have to actually walk around the cage and try to hunt. It's just really amazing how slowly they stalk their food and how quickly they snatch it up. Now, don't expect your veiled chameleon to eat every day. You should try to feed a baby every day, but an adult will not eat every day. So twice a week for an adult is perfectly fine. As for the amount that you want to feed them, you want to feed them basically as much as they want to eat. So just, you kind of get used to it. You buy a certain amount of crickets, put that in there, see how quickly they eat all of them. If they eat them really quick, you probably want to increase the amount of crickets that you're feeding or whatever other insects you're using. So just try to keep up with their appetite unless they are getting a little too chunky. And you should dust the insects in calcium about every other week. And that's really important again for preventing metabolic bone disease. Now, this last bit is about females. Females will lay eggs, and it's kind of like chickens. They will lay the egg regardless if there's a male there, so even if the eggs are infertile, they're still going to have to lay eggs. This isn't like a regular daily basis like a chicken. Let's see, I think my chameleon had her first eggs when she was about 2 years old, and it's not very often. But you can notice when your chameleon does need to lay eggs because usually their belly will get like really chunky. And then you want to put a bucket of dirt in their cage for them, and they're going to go in there and dig a hole and lay all their eggs in there, and then after that you can just throw the eggs away. But during this time you want to make sure that there's no stress for them, that you're not bugging them, because if they are interrupted while they're trying to lay their eggs, they'll stop and then they'll wait a few days to lay their eggs again. And you don't want them to stay with their eggs. You want them to be able to lay them and get them out. So make sure that they don't have anything that's stressing them out or making them uncomfortable, and that they have an area kind of hidden where they can lay the eggs. Usually I'll put the bucket of dirt behind the pots so that she feels like she's covered. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope it helps you understand more about chameleons and helps you decide if a veiled chameleon is the right pet for you. If you want to keep up to date with my animals like my chameleon Athena, then go ahead and follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, where I post every day. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!